What's going on, everybody? A little chilly afternoon from the storage unit. And yes, it is that cold. Probably be the last episode I record here because of how cold it is. I've been struggling the last few days. I'm not going to lie. With everything going on in the world, politics is not my thing, right? And it's so hard to just kind of bite your tongue sometimes. Lewiston, Maine kind of hit home a little bit. I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not to get into anything like that. I'm just going to talk about myself and my roller coaster, right? How I go up and down and the way I know when I go up and down. We're going to talk some golf as well, obviously. I'm not going to spend an hour ranting and raving about this. It's going to be about 5 minutes real quick, and then we're going to get into Thorny Lea and Vesper Country Club. But you had him. He checked himself in. He said, I'm struggling. I need help. You gave him some meds, 12 hours, 24 hours later, you let him go. Like, I'm most clear, and I know myself, and I know what's going on, and I know where I'm heading right before I head there, right? I've stopped feeling good. I wake up one morning, I feel like I ran into a wall. I'm sore. I'm cranky. I'm crabby. I do everything I can to avoid people as much as possible. How do we not have a law in place where if a guy says, I need your help, and he checks himself in for a 24 or 48-hour hold, we keep him away from weapons when he gets out? Or how do we not have a law in place where that's when you do the mandatory hold? Guy in his right mind checked in and said, I need help. And you just put him on meds and send him on his way? It just doesn't make sense. Now, you can argue about the gun laws. You can make it political all you want. Democrats, you're never going to get the guns off the streets. Republicans, settle down. They're never going to get the guns off the streets. Let's just put some laws in place that help people, the people that need help. As far as I'm concerned, if you're on an antidepressant and it's your responsibility to take it every day, you shouldn't have a gun. Because if you don't take it for 4 or 5 days, you go off your rocker. I'm on such a low dose that I see it quickly. I don't take it for 2 days because I'm feeling giddy. And trust me, when I'm on it for a month straight, I feel like a 12-year-old. And it's not me. It's not my personality. And some people say I'm nicer and I'm better that way, but I'm not comfortable being that guy. So I have to rein it back in somehow, right? You had them. It's so frustrating to talk about, and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to get into too much detail, but you had them, right? I know everybody talks to me about, hey, you got to keep it golf. We got to, don't say shit. I would never talk about that, blah, 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 but it's there. It's in the industry. Like, people are struggling with it. The problem with golf is everybody always wants to smile and have a good time, and that's great, but at sometimes you have to stick up for yourself, right? You have to say, hey, I need a timeout, or hey, I'm tired of working 90 hours a week for 50 grand a year, right? It all ties back into Almeida Golf, and the one frustrating thing about Almeida Golf was we had 100% conversion rate. We just had to get the golf pros out of their own way. We're trying to bring you business. That was my point. That was the mistake I made. What I should have done was I should have started Almeida Golf on a public driving range with my own accounts, with the retail side of it, killed it, and then when people saw I was taking their business, then go to them and say, listen, I fit 12 of your members last year. They should have been on your range in your golf shop. But that's where it got lost, and that was my fault, right? The wheels were spinning. We had all these ideas going. I'm not going to get too much into it, but the reason why I chose to go into business with the guy that I did was because he said, hey, I have this business. It's plug and play. I already have this business model. You're going to have health insurance, salary. You're going to have my marketing department. What I wanted was him. I wanted business. Like, how do we do this? How do we spin this? I need a partner. Kind of, hey, this is what we did this week. We got to figure out what's the spin. And every time I tried to have a conversation with him, it was, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. And then when my dog died, I was like, fuck it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Right. But again, it goes back to Lewiston, Maine. When my dog died, I was numb. I didn't care. There was no consequence. Playing Vesper with Mike the other day, we were laughing and we were talking about the fall and October and November at the casino. There was no win. I was playing until I lost. I was playing until it was time to get up and leave from the table. It wasn't about gambling. Um, it wasn't about wins and losses. It was about time. It was about numb. It was about doing anything I could to get my mind off of everything going on in my life. Um, that was the scary time, right? Because there was no consequences. And to me, it was safer being at a casino where my car was parked. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't leaving property for 4 or 5 straight days. Dinners were there. Everything I needed was there. So I didn't have to worry about it. I guess maybe that was my version of checking myself in, right? I was aware enough about myself. I was better off there. So I stayed. So, you get guys that go on these drinking bins and get DUIs and they pay $15,000-$30,000 to a lawyer. Well, that was my $15,000-$30,000. Unfortunately, it was from 40 to 120 down to 10, back up to 50. It was a roller coaster, right? But the sad part was I didn't even enjoy the wins because I needed help. At that time, I needed help, but I didn't have it. I didn't have access to it. The first time I ever tried to ask for help was about 18 months ago now. No, actually, maybe 24. I don't even remember anymore. But I got in front of a doctor, and it was my first appointment with this doctor, and they have you fill out the questionnaire. And I figured every answer I answered honestly. Do you have weeks where you don't want to get out of bed? Yes. Do you struggle with thoughts of killing yourself? Thoughts of it? Yes. Actions on it? Not so much, right? So by the time he came in the office, I was nervous. I was sending texts to the girl I was dating at the time. I was uncomfortable. The anxiety kicked in and my heart rate started, right? Didn't even look at the sheet of paper. Said, all right, we need to get you in a stress test. Get out of the office. Didn't even address it. Not even, John, how we feeling? Nothing. Just, John, I don't like your numbers. Your heart's racing. We got to get you on a stress test. I mean, are we serious? Of course my heart's racing. I'm with a new doctor that I've only met through video chat during COVID. And now I'm starting to talk about shit that I've never talked about with anybody. Shit that I've never admitted to, with anybody. And he wants me to go get a stress test and ignores what I'm talking about. So it's like, you get frustrated with these doctors. Now here we go. A couple months later, I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm losing my shit. Every time I'm around people, it's getting worse by the day. I need to talk to somebody, right? So I call betterhealth.com. I get a therapist. We start talking. And she suggests that I get on an antidepressant. So now I don't have a primary care doctor. I never saw that guy again. So I call my rheumatologist and I say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And he says, yeah, let's go with a small dose. So we're barely scratching the surface. So I start taking it, and within 7 days, I'm already starting to see myself be more personable. I have more energy. And then I played golf, and it was like the cloud lifted. It was like when you're standing over shots saying, all right, this, and you're functioning and don't hit it left and that. And then all of a sudden you're standing over shots and you're like, wow, this fits my eye. I might make this fucker. Right? It was night and day. So I hit more wedges close that season than any other season. I mean, I kind of felt like I was playing golf again. I stood over a shot. If it was inside 120 yards, it was going to be inside 5 feet. It wasn't a question. It was just a matter of whether or not I made the putt. But that's how it flipped, right? So if you have a guy that checks himself into a 24 or 48-hour hold and you put him on meds, yeah, all of a sudden he's going to be in a good mood and want to get out. That's why we need laws in place to not let these idiots out. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't say idiots. He's not an idiot. He was smart. He knew he needed help. He checked himself in. And that's why I get so worked up and so frustrated about it. But nobody wants to talk about meds and mental health, and we can't go public with that. Nope, we can't hold him against his will. It just makes no sense. But anyway, back to me, right? I'm now, so here I am now, 18, 19 months on antidepressants. I don't have a doctor. Been playing phone tag with fucking Hawthorne Medical. Forget that, to the point where I quit. And yes, that's on me. But we've all saw it. We've all seen it for 6 months on the podcast. I'm a crazy person. If I get stuck and somebody pisses me off and I get frustrated, I'm not going to call. So when I call there and they put me on hold for 45 minutes every time I call, fuck it. When you leave a message saying, listen, I don't care who it is. As long as they have a fucking doctor's license, please book me an appointment. They call me back. Hey, John, looking to book you an appointment. I understand. Call back again. No answer. You get the voicemail and you say, listen, I'm in and out of service all the time. I never get your call. Please just book me an appointment. Hey, John, we heard you're looking to book an appointment. So by the fifth time, you're like, fuck it. I'm done. Right? So now here we are, 18 months later. I'm on an antidepressant. No idea whether or not it's working. I know every month or 2 months or so, I got to stop taking it because I start to get giddy. I start doing dumb shit and being like one of these fucking corny guys on YouTube. Right? It's not who I want to be. It's not what I want this podcast to be. I want this podcast to be like golf stuff, but the stuff that we talk about, right? Hey, you were fucking crazy last week. Yeah, I was struggling, right? The shit that we talk about at the table when you're done playing golf, right? That's what happened with Mike after Vesper, and I can't wait to get into it. We're going to get into it in a little bit. I'm definitely going to work some pictures into this episode because it was such a fun day and it's such a fun golf course. But after the round, right, we sit down, we're talking, started talking life. We started talking, the fact that he loves the fact that I keep it raw and I keep it real, and I'm not afraid to talk about being on antidepressants or smoking weed, right? It seems like the only time we hear anything negative in the golf world is when somebody's getting killed for saying something negative, right? Well, I don't even know. I should have done the research, but the dude that had all of the reports from the Ryder Cup, right, about the hat and all that. Well, I like Justin Thomas, so I don't want to hate on him, but the corny, this after the story, you created attention to the story. So the guys that are complaining in the golf business, in the golf world, Rory, JT, they sound whiny because it's all they talk about is the negative of the negative. They never address the comments. So again, it's kind of where this podcast kind of went off the rails. And again, I don't like to get into politics or medical stuff because I don't feel educated enough to talk about it. But when something like this happens and I can give my experience, not my opinion. This is my experience. This is what I am like on my meds and off my meds. And I've made it clear to you guys that my depression revolves more about how I'm feeling physically than how I am mentally. When I wake up in the morning, I put my feet down and the balls of my feet feel like I'm standing on tennis balls. Here we go again. Take some meds, right? We gotta get going on the prednisone or the handfuls of Motrin or you know whatever it is to get through those days. And the golf business was good to me. Financially, professionally, it was good to me. Physically, mentally, it wasn't. So that's kind of where I'm struggling right now with golf stuff, right? How many guys are on YouTube teaching? It's not me, right? Listen, that's right where I belong. I feel like this is where I belong, with flip flops and socks, a hoodie, cargo pants, camo, just whatever at the storage unit. You want to listen to what I have to say about golf? Great. You might have to wade through the cycle a little bit, you know. And again, I use words, and I use it sarcastically in joke. So I know the mental health community hates to use those words, but sometimes we have to laugh at ourselves, right? We have to look back and be like, yeah, that was crazy. I knew that was coming too. I should have done something about it. I just, I don't know. This is kind of a two-part episode. I'm going to stop here, and we're going to get into Thorny Lea and Vesper. But this is me. It's my opinion on Lewiston, Maine. It sucks. We're too busy worried about politics. We need to start worrying about people. Somebody who checks himself in for a 48-hour hold is on the brink, but clear enough to check themselves into a 48-hour hold. It should be automatic 7 days forced, because that's when he's his clearest, right? You put him on meds, and now he's in a good mood, and you let him out, and then he doesn't take his meds, and things happen. And by no means am I excusing the dude for doing it, right? It's the worst thing he could possibly do. But everybody talks about Maine being live free or die, whatever all that shit is. Where were the people in the bowling alley with their guns? So the bad look for the defense. If everybody had a gun, it wouldn't happen, right? It's pretty much free carry up in Maine. There was nobody there, nobody to help. So I don't know. All right, let's get on to Thorny Lea and Vesper Country Club. Let's talk some golf. Let's go. All right, guys. For those of you that agree or disagree, again, that's just my opinion. For those of you that fast forwarded through it, great. That's why I put the timestamp in the description. This is my place, right? This is kind of the battle that I'm struggling with between golf and personal. So let's get on to some fun stuff, right? The rounds of Thorny Lea was awesome. Always great to get there. 70-degree day in October, tough to beat. The person that was coming to get the couch was a buddy of mine, buddy of my dad's, and I'm like, you know what? He asked to do it on a Tuesday. Mike invited me to Vesper on Thursday, so I had to get out before we did it. I'm like, hey, how about we play Thorny, and then we grab the couch. So it worked out perfect. It was awesome. It's always fun to get out there with my dad, especially when we both have like mutual friends where we can kind of get out and have a good time. Thorny is Thorny. It is what it is, right? It's that mid-level member-owned club that's always in great shape. It's got a ton of good players, a ton of history. Styles and Van Cleek from that 1900 era. It's going to have a lot of the same characteristics of a lot of the old school. They all tried to copy Ross, or worked with or for Ross, so they kind of took his techniques and kind of put them into their own place, right? Fast greens, front to backs, protected on all sides, little tiny greens. It was not about 7,000, 7,400 back then. It was about golf. It was about hitting shots, hitting it in the fairways, hitting it on the greens, but that's why it's so good, and you get so many good players coming out of there because they use all of the features there while they play golf against each other, and when they go away and they go on the road, they know they're ready to play. It's a good golf course. Like I said, it's not going to be like wowed upon layout wise, but it's solid, and when they keep it in the shape that it is, it's great. And there's some awesome holes out there, just right off the bat. 2, 6, 18. That's without even really thinking. There's a couple goofy holes, the hole that goes around the school, and then 16, I believe. But it's kind of typical of that era. There was some goofy holes on a lot of those places. So, yeah, not to get to too much about Thorny Lea. You guys know the episode, and I'll put a link in the description. Thorny Lea, a tour of Thorny Lea. This was when I was just starting to get back playing and getting out there. So the video's a little raw, and the sound's a little raw, but we had some fun. We had some laughs out there. So check that out. Now that I got a lot of new followers, you might not have seen that episode of Thorny Lea. I kind of talked through the bunker renovations, some trees that they've taken out the last few years, some bunkers that they've added. It's a pretty cool episode. And for you Thorny Lea members, it's pretty cool to see, listen to what goes into the thought process behind the renovation. So, all right, guys, let's get on to Vesper, right? Like I said, I was joking in the stories that day. If I don't come home, blame Mike. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall. He reached out. He's a listener. He said, "Hey, I love the podcast. I've been listening from day one." Um, but it's one of those things where he just has pride in his golf course. Same as Thorny. They just take pride. Um, Speaking of pride, one of the things I forgot to mention in the Thorny comments was Styles Van Cleek did Taconic, NCAA Championship 1999 or 2000, another Monarchs win up here in Massachusetts. But back to Vesper. Right? He takes pride in his club. He loves showing it off. He knows what he has, and it's the difference between that conversation of a golfer and somebody who plays golf. Right? Golfers get it. They take that pride. They're never gonna not fix a ball mark. They're never gonna go to the sand bucket rather than take the 5 steps extra to take a divot. Yes, up here in the north, the divot is better than sand. So those are the guys that I'm talking to in this podcast. The guys that don't do that, the guys that are playing golf, that want to consider themselves golfers, might learn something by listening to this podcast, right? I'm not going to get into hole by hole with the golf course. I know guys can go online a million places to listen to somebody a lot more educated on it than me talk about the golf course. I'll talk about a couple little features here and there. Right off the bat, the panic mode goes in when you're driving to the entrance and you see the tiny little wooden sign and a one-way bridge going across to the island. I'd never been there before, so I'm like, oh shit, did GPS take me to the maintenance barn or to the middle of the golf course where we're crossing over to go play another hole? Or it's kind of a little scary at first, but once you get through the bridge, you get through the first hole, you get onto the property and you start to see where you are. Mike came over, took me over to the range, a little chit chat. Then we got out and playing. I hit the drive off the first hole. Sure enough, I hit the road and put some rash on the golf ball right off the bat. So who else has fallen victim to that one? But hit a nice little wedge, made a little par. Played the second hole, didn't play it very well. And then we get to 3, and that's when he started kind of showing me different parts. And this is one of the ones I'll cut in with a picture here that I wanted you to see. I stand in the fairway and kind of pan, and you'll see the way the bunkering is shaped. And it's typical of Ross style, 50 or 60 yards short of the green. But the reason why he did it was when he first came out, I guess, to design the property, that used to be a racetrack. So he made the bunkers still appear to the fact that it's a racetrack. Then you get up to the green, you see it's right on the river, and again, I'm not the best cameraman in the world, so it's kind of not what I'm trying to talk about. Just trying to talk about the day, right? The one thing I did forget to mention about the second hole, and it comes later in the round as well, 15 green, 16 tee, second tee, and 1 green, all kind of come to one general area, and it's all closely mowed. They could put the tees anywhere. The ball can end up in some funny spots, and it gives you some options around the green. So it's pretty cool. That's what these golf courses do. You see a lot of it on the older golf courses. Pinehurst number 2, for example, it's a typical Ross with a ton of runouts. So it was pretty cool to walk up the steps, and you see all the shaved areas. You see the 2 tees clearly defined, but the whole back of the green. Then there's another par 3. Shame on me if I'm hitting a shot on a par 3 and I don't have a camera out. I got a podcast. If I make a 1, I want to get it on camera. So you see the one where I was hitting the hybrid. I end up hitting it off the back, and I'll show you this shot here. But it goes off the back, and again, another par 3 with a collection area down in the back. I would have much rather stayed in the short grass. It got just barely into the high stuff. I was kind of trying to show off, joking around. I try to hit a flop shot, but out of the high stuff, I'm probably going to go low and just let it run down the hill. Off the tight stuff, that's when I'm going to hit the flop shot. To me, flop shots are easier off tight lies than they are off furry lies. Off furry lies, there's too much of a tendency to open the face and the ball just slides up the face. We went over this already on not one of the ones online that I talk about. Maybe if I can find it, I'll cut it in here. But when you're setting up to hit a flop shot out of the rough, opening the face just creates a problem, right? When we're down off of turf and tight lies, now we can open the face and we don't have to worry about that ball sliding up the face because the club's never going to get too deep and it's never going to slide under it. So, but again, I get off topic a little bit. We're talking about Vesper, and I'm talking about the way it funneled into the rough. But again, it's creativity. It's it's different shots around the green. It's golf, not golf shot, and it's more fun that way. So, couple other unique characteristics, 16, 17, 18, pretty good finish, 18 par 5. I'm guessing when they play like the Mass Open and stuff, they probably play that hole as a par 4. But coming up 18 with a giant clubhouse in the back, it's just pretty cool. The fact that it's been there since 1887, I believe, that's crazy. I mean, the club that I grew up at, right on the water, 1895. But 1887 is pretty good. And that clubhouse, they said the clubhouse hasn't changed like anything. They had to modernize, they renovated, they built a new building for the golf shop. But they kind of keep the same architecture and vibe, and it kind of looks like it belongs. They built a grill room in the golf shop, which I think is a huge thing. I've been a member and worked at a couple clubs with separated golf shops, and it only works when the club still stays connected, right? Hyannisport, for example, was a different place the second time that I worked. It went from being a golf club with a nice little homey golf shop to a country club. And as it should, it's that kind of level club, so you'd want to see it go that way. But it just kind of changed a little bit. The kids took over, the new money. So now it's more of a country club. It's a different vibe. I'm not sure that I'd fit in there, and I get it. I think they could have done Rick a little better. It probably wasn't a good fit for him anymore after 30 years and the change the club made. I just think they could have done it a little bit better way. I knew the guy that they were replacing with wasn't the guy, and it's been a revolving door of golf pros since. So, hopefully Tim's doing a good job over there, and he'll stay there for a while, but you look back on your job and your career, and these clubs, they all kind of have, the good ones all have the same morals, I guess, not morals, beliefs and pride. And, you're never going to play Thorny Lea or Vesper or Hyannisport and get into a bunker and have it look like, somebody had a WWE match in there before you got in it, right? It's, you hit a ball in a bunker, you try to leave the bunker better when you leave than when you walked into it. You're never going to go to Thorny Lea or Vesper, and you hear them. The members complain, "Oh, ball marks everywhere," and I'm just like, "You ain't seen nothing. This is nothing, right? Take some pride in your club. If you're not bringing guests, I question why are you a member there, right? If it's not like it's the point of having access to that place and bringing your boys and playing the member guests. And we'll get into the whole pricing of member guests in the future. Caddyshack 2 is almost embarrassing, and they don't come even close to a lot of the clubs that are $100 less than them. So you wonder why they don't sell out. But again, I don't want to get into that rant. And again, this is kind of what this podcast was about, right? Playing golf with Mike was great. Sunny day, awesome weather, great golf. Sat down, had some wings, talked life. The podcast didn't really talk business at all. It was just a couple guys playing golf, and I wanted it to be that way. I wanted to make sure anybody watching that was kind of thinking, should I invite him to play some golf? Listen, it's not going to be an episode. I'm not going to have my camera out trying to get everything on tape. No, I want to play golf. I want to have fun. You guys want to sit down and chat, throw the mics on after the round, by all means, we can do it. But even if you don't, I can come up with content on my own. Guys, a couple quick things before we end, right? I get it. Talk golf, right? I see the views. I see the counts. I'm seeing the different social media platforms, how to work it, how to use shorts to bring people to my YouTube page. I'm learning as I go. This first part of this podcast was a podcast, right? This was me talking about my opinion about personal things. I don't care, right? It's my vent. That's what I didn't have when I worked in the golf business. There was no start stop button. My phone was constantly on. I was always responding to people right away. It felt like I never put it down, and that's a personal problem. That's something that I have to struggle with, right? Um, you saw me kind of fumbling all weekend. I wanted to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it, and I hate talking politics. But I felt like that was something that was personal. It was my life. It affects how I think, and it shows you guys how I get stuck on things, right? And I try to talk about other stuff, but at some point you just got to talk about that and get it off your chest. Sometimes you post it, sometimes you don't. Um, for everybody that supported me so far, I see I'm on shadow ban again on TikTok. Unfortunately, my Obi-Wan comment got categorized as Star Wars and not good with F words and kids. So it's funny. You see the view count. It goes like this. You see when I'm on and off shadow ban. I'm going to piss some people off. Okay, I get it. I understand. But you also see the view count 4,200, 4,300 on YouTube when I'm talking fitting with Boki, 20,000 when I'm talking on TikTok. It's crazy. So I'm going to do my best to keep it golf, but you guys have to understand sometimes I just got to vent, and you listen or you don't. The guys that respond behind the scenes that they like it and respect it, thank you. I appreciate it. And this is the best place to do it I've found so far. So for those of you guys going out for Halloween tonight, be safe. Say it's not my thing is an understatement. I don't like people when they're not wearing masks. I think I want to be surrounded by a group of people who I don't know the fuck they are. Have fun. Let's go.